So you're thinking that you want to run your next or your first marathon sub 3:30, or you're a fair bit away from that and you want to know what it will take to get you there. Running sub 3:30 would put you in the top 10% of marathon finishers. So not everyone can achieve that, but understanding what it takes will make you a smarter, faster runner and bring your times of 4 hours plus closer to it. I'm Russ, 2:43 marathon runner at Sydney last year, and with Sydney coming up at the end of the month, I'm hoping to go sub 2:40. Follow me on Strava if you want to get more insight into my training over these last few weeks and then see how it goes on race day. I'm going to run through what you need to do to rub sub 3:30 in your training and then how to pull it off on race day. So by the end of the video, you'll know exactly where you need to be in your fitness and how you can bring it all together on race day to run that perfect race. I'll go through the pace that you need to run on race day and how to tactically pull off the best race, what performance requirements you need to be able to hit 3:30, what the training involves, and what marathons you're best off targeting to give yourself the best chance of going sub 3:30. The whole point of this video is to give you all the information that you need so that when you turn up on the start line, you'll have the confidence to do what it takes to get your marathon PR and come away with a smile on your face. Those of you that have watched the channel before, you'll know that when it comes to target time for the marathon, you need to be prepared for it. Running sub 3:30, you can't just wing it on race day. So get used to the fact that you're going to need to put in a serious block of consistent running of around 12 to 14 weeks in order to get there. You'll need to carve out time of your diary instead of just trying to fit a run in here and there and shift your lifestyle in the build up to it. Now, it might seem quite daunting at first, but I promise you, it'll be worth it when it comes together on the day. So let's talk about race day. All right, so how does running 8-minute miles or 4-minute 58 kilometers for the entire distance sound? Achievable? Might seem like a bit of a stretch for where you are at the moment, but if you're able to put together a decent training block of 4 to 5 runs a week, those times will come a lot closer week by week. What you're not actually going to like is that you need to run a little bit faster than that because most people actually end up running a further than a marathon. You'll actually end up running around 26.35, 26.45 miles, which is about 42.4, 42.6 kilometers. So why is that when it should be 42.2? If you think about all the traffic of people that you come up against, having to dodge and weave, especially in the first 10 minutes or so, you're not actually running the optimal running route. And then when things clear up, the further from the start line you get, you'll see that most people actually follow each other around the outside of bends instead of taking the shortest possible route on the inside or the tangent. And that all adds to your race distance. I've talked about this in some of my other videos, that if you're lucky enough to be running a major, there will be a blue line, which is called the ideal line. And that'll be on the road in front of you. And that will give you the ideal legal route. But if you're not running a major, then bear in mind that you want to stick to the shortest route possible. Now, from a pacing and tactics perspective, you should always be running the race as neutrally or as even paced as possible, perhaps even with a slight negative split. And that's where you run the back half of the race faster than the front half of the race. You can always try to justify to yourself that you can go out fast and bank some time, but the reality is that you're using more energy to do that, which will have a cumulative effect come towards the end of the race, compared to if you went out evenly paced or slightly slower. Unless there is a huge net downhill in the first half of the race, you want to conserve as much energy as possible. And that will be for the most difficult part of the race, which is the back half of the race. And then when you get into that final kilometre, we all know that you can find a bit of extra pace from somewhere to get you over the line. What are your current performance requirements that you need to be able to meet to go sub 3:30? Well, look, there's some great online tools that you can use that will give you a good understanding of where you need to be across different race distances in order to be able to achieve a sub 3:30 marathon. I'd recommend that you are close, if not at these times already, when you enter into the training block. If you're miles outside of them, it's still achievable, but you're going to have to put in a hell of a shift and a hell of a training block and hope for an amazing race day in order to give yourself that chance. So if we dive into the VDOT online race calculator, and I'll put a link in the description below, then we want to be looking at a marathon of 3 hours 30. That will give us equivalent pace of 4-minute 59 kilometers. Now, other equivalent race distances and paces that we want to be achieving, if we hit the equivalent button, you can see that you want to be looking at being able to do a half marathon in 1 hour 41:11. A 10K in 45:40 there or thereabouts, or a 5K park run in 22:01. Now, these are great calculators and they give you a very rough estimation of where you should be currently. And why I say is where you should be currently is because each of these race times assume that you're as equally well trained for each of them as the other. And trust me, it takes a lot more to be well trained for a marathon than it does to be for a 5K. When you're trying to go sub 3:30 in the marathon, the key is to stay as relaxed and as efficient as possible for as long as you can. Now, most of the race, you should be running in your aerobic zone, and that's where your body's using oxygen effectively, and fatigue is pretty much kept at bay. And at that effort level, you're generating smaller amounts of lactate, but your body is clearing it just as fast, keeping everything under control. Now, a good sign that your aerobic system is well developed is if you can hold your target race pace of, remember, around 5-minute kilometers or 8-minute miles for about 90 minutes or so. And that's mostly with your heart rate staying in that zone 3, possibly zone 4 area. What that means is that you've got a decent enough level of fitness to build off of and handle your training block. You want to reach the halfway point in the marathon feeling like you've barely even started it. And staying in that aerobic zone for as long as you can helps you get there, which is why we want to build out from a base, from a good foundation. Because sooner or later in the race, you'll hit your lactate threshold. Now, we'll touch upon lactate threshold. That's basically the tipping point where things begin to shift. And as the race goes on and you try to hold your pace, your heart rate naturally rises and decouples, and that's a process called cardiac drift. And once you cross your lactate threshold, your body starts accumulating lactate faster than it can clear it, and you'll rely more on carbs than fat to fuel your effort. And it's at this stage that you've got roughly 45 to 60 minutes, or like me in the previous marathon, an hour and a half of where you're running before fatigue really sets in. And that's why training just under your threshold, say of around 4 minutes 40, 4 minutes 50 kilometers, or 7:30 to 7:45 miles is critical. And the reason for that is that it teaches your body to stay efficient under pressure and hold pace for longer before tipping into that red zone. If you head to the final stretch of the marathon, just nudging into your threshold zone, you're probably in a good position to finish it strong. But if you go over too early, you'll start chewing through carbs and accumulating lactate too fast. Think of your lactate threshold like a point of no return. Closer you get to it later in the race, the better. But if you cross it too soon, you're risking bonking. I've done a video all about this, which you can see just here. I'm going to push to 1,000 subscribers, so just a quick reminder to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what marathon you're targeting and where you feel you are versus the time that you want to achieve. I'm happy to answer any questions if you're unsure of your training or you want some input, so just hit me up below and I'll do my best to answer them. What the training involves. If you've got your sights set on breaking 3 hours and 30 minutes in the marathon, you'll need more than just grit on the day. You need a structured, consistent block of training. Once you've laid the groundwork with some solid base fitness, your focus should shift to a 14, 16 week or so build, where your weekly mileage gradually increases to peak somewhere between 65 and 85 kilometers. That's about 40, 53 miles. The exact number doesn't actually matter as much as the consistency. If you stack week after week on top of each other of quality training, that's what helps build resilience and stamina. The bulk of your training and where most of your gains will come from should be made up of easy running and jogging. And that means zone 2 work, aerobic, conversational pace running. And that helps you develop endurance without overly stressing your body. Now, a large study in 2024 of non-elite marathon runners found that those successfully running sub 3 hours will log in around 34 miles or 55 kilometers a week of just easy running with their faster stuff on top. Now, while the study focused on 3-hour marathoners, what we can take from it is that the more volume of easy running you do, the better. And that typically means running at around 5 minutes 30 to 6 minutes per kilometer. It's about 850 to 940 a mile. Relaxed, steady, and under control. Now, sometimes you may feel like these runs aren't doing much, but trust me, after a few months, you'll look back and see that you are running much less effort and a lower heart rate for the same relative pace. But pace variation is important too. Each week, aim to include 1 or 2 faster sessions that will help develop your aerobic capacity and improve your speed endurance. Now, these could alternate between VO2 max sessions like 6 by 800 meters at 5K pace And tempo or threshold runs such as 3 by 10 minutes are just faster than your goal marathon pace, more towards your half marathon pace. Now, these workouts, they train your body to handle fatigue, process lactate more efficiently, and improve your ability to stay strong when things get tough. Then we have the long run, which is your main workout and arguably the most important part of your week. So over the course of your training block, aim to gradually extend your long run out to about 30, 34 kilometers. That's about 18 to 21 miles. And as you get fitter, start including segments at just below or just about your goal marathon pace, especially in the second half of the run. And that will help you simulate what it feels like to hold pace on tired legs. There are also some prime opportunities to fine-tune your nutrition strategy, test your race day shoes, and get comfortable with all your race day gear. Then lastly, strength training is another key element that many runners overlook, myself included. Incorporating 1 or 2 gym sessions a week, focusing on heavy compound lifts like squats, lunges, deadlifts, that will help you stay injury-free and improve your running economy. So you want to be aiming for 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps. Focus particularly on the single leg variations of those exercises because that will address any imbalances you have. Remember, running is a single leg sport and you want to focus on the single leg activities. So your core and your hips should also be part of your routine. They're what hold your form together in the back half of that race, so definitely focus on those areas too. Now, it should go without saying, but it often gets forgotten that you want to give yourself the best possible chance of getting a PR by running a fast marathon. A marathon is a marathon at the end of the day. Why pick a hard one when you can pick an easier one? You want to look for a flat route with minimal elevation and avoid races prone to extreme weather conditions on the day. So in the US, some of the fastest and most popular options, that includes CIM, Chicago, Houston, and increasingly the California Surf City Marathon. Then in the UK, you've got the Manchester Marathon. That remains a pretty top choice, along with Edinburgh and the London Marathon. They're all known for having relatively flat courses, and London especially has it for its unreal number of supporters. And then for those of us in Oz, you've got the Gold Coast Marathon that consistently ranks as one of the fastest, with Sydney Marathon also offering a good choice, but each of those can actually be prone to a hot day. Hot tip is Ballarat Marathon. That's been talked about as a great option to avoid that. Then across Europe, top fast marathons, that includes Valencia, Berlin, Amsterdam, and increasingly the Prague Marathon, which is all known for their smooth, speedy courses and good weather conditions. So pick one of those races if you want to give yourself a decent shot at going sub 3:30. Chasing a sub 3:30 marathon, it's more than just numbers on a stopwatch. It's a personal milestone that sticks with you long after you cross that finish line. And it's the kind of goal that reflects months of dedication, discipline, and belief in your own potential. Even if you're not there just yet, hopefully this has shown you that it's not an exclusive club reserved for superhumans. And with some steady, consistent training and a smart approach, it's an ambition that's surprisingly achievable. Loads more on the channel to help you train smarter, race better, avoid common mistakes that hold runners back. Hit subscribe, and if you're serious about progressing and if you're on your own marathon journey, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're working towards. Ta-ra.